Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Dauntless playthrough. Today on our playthrough, we are going to be hunting down two giant behemoths. And while I go through the hunt, I will be giving you guys some tips and tricks, and this will hopefully help you guys when you go on your own hunts as well. Now, we are going to be going after the PANGAR, and we're going to be going after the Hellion. They're basically the same thing, so hopefully it doesn't scare you. They just have two different elements. PANGAR is ice and Hellion is basically heat or fire. Now, if I decided to go straight into builds, which is what a lot of people would likely do, I realize that some of you probably will not have those mods, so I will just be going through tips and tricks and things to get you started. Now, we are starting with PANGAR, of course. This is one of the easiest large behemoths out there. When you start getting into the game, you will at one point in time go and face this guy, and he is quite easier if you're fighting the base level. And one of the best or first tips that I will give you guys about this is that it is nice to bring a fire-based weapon with you whenever you're slaying a PANGAR as a new slayer or a new player. In other words, fire cancels ice, ice cancels fire, radiant cancels umbral, umbral cancels radiant, and for some of the shock behemoths, I think some of them are weak to ice. So basically, you want to go for an element that is opposite of what the behemoth is. And whenever you get on the ship, you look to your right side and it will show you the behemoth there, and it will tell you, hey, the behemoth does this type of ability, and the behemoth is weak to this type of element or damage. So that is one of the things that you want to look into, and of course builds will follow later on as far as resistance and all that kind of stuff. Now right here you will see that I'm using an axe, and to be specific, I'm using a shroud axe, but don't worry about the type of behemoth weapon that I have, just the style or the type of weapon that it is. It's an axe. And the really important thing about this is that whenever I'm going against big and less agile behemoths, I always go with an axe. The reason for that is because behemoths like this are a little bit slower. So for me, as someone who doesn't main axe as much, it's easy for me to get all my hits in. So that is one of the main reasons why I always take an axe with me whenever I fight big and slow behemoths. And one of the really cool things about it is, of course, when it comes to the axe, it just deals a lot more massive damage. Sometimes I'm able to deal like 1000 damage at a single hit, and that is why the axe is really great for that single damage or high single damage numbers. I also think it has a better range compared to the swords. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but feel free to also use whatever you want to use. Now, a quick tip for you is that if you're going against any behemoth that you haven't fought before, you can watch YouTube to see what the behemoth fights like. Or if you don't want to do that, you don't want to get spoiled, then I will say just take a sword with you just to be safe. Swords are agile and you're able to move around and dodge things easily. Also, if you're fighting these guys, always go for the head first. Knock out the behemoth, then go for the tail. Whatever you do, the tail is always going to be a priority in some of these larger behemoths. The tail is going to kill you 9 times out of 10. It will interrupt a lot of things. It mess up the entire hunt. That's why a lot of times I convince people to go for the tail. Plus, chances are you need the tail pieces or you need some tail items as well. So it's a lot much easier to do this. Now, in case you were wondering, I'm going with the +5 knockout king, and that is one of the things that we're going to talk about when we start talking about moddings and customizations in another video. The PANGAR is really easy. You just got to watch the abilities. The tail swipes is quite easy. The elemental attacks are easier to dodge, which are the ice shards and frost. Whenever it rolls at you, it's also easy to dodge. Now, one thing you got to watch out for is that the hitboxes is a lot bigger, so you got to be able to roll out of the way into a farther distance. You want to keep your eyes on that. So just go ahead, slay the behemoths, go for the heads, knock it down, go for the legs. If you cannot reach the head, go for the legs, and then once it's down, just go straight for the tail and chop it off. The next behemoth that we're going to be talking about is pretty much an identical version, as I've said. This is basically the opposite of the PANGAR, and this is Hellion. This is fire based, and this one is a little bit more agile than the PANGAR, and this is why I'm bringing a sword with me. And it's also cool to alternate between things. Don't worry about the type of sword it is, just consider it as a sword. Now, if you're new to Dauntless, you're a new and up and coming slayer, then I will say go for a PANGAR sword, which is basically an ice-based sword, and that will help you really well, and you will be able to cast some status on the behemoth. Now, whenever you catch fire, all you have to do is roll on the floor, roll multiple times, and you will kill that fire. So that is the best way to get away if you ever catch fire and you're burning. So one of the things that you will notice here is that the Hellion always digs into the ground and it will launch itself into the air like a cannonball. You need to dodge that. Now, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're using maybe headphones or something like that. And the moment it launches into the air, you just have to time it right before it hits the ground and just roll, and dodge out of the way. Or the moment it jumps into the air, you want to look at it and see where the trajectory is headed. Now, this is going to be a very, very hard, a very, very tough one. It's one of those things where you have to learn it as you play, because that is what you will notice in games like this. You can always get tips, you can always get builds and all that kind of stuff, but you always got to learn as you play. You know, it is one of those things where it cannot be taught. You can only be guided. The battle strategy is also a little bit similar to the PANGAR, so just go ahead, go for the head, and then once it's down, go for the tail, and just, you know, rinse and repeat, and keep on doing the same thing. Dodge and roll to keep the fire off of you. And of course, this one is going to drop some miniature orbs of fire, and you want to pick those up. It's like a blue orb on the floor, and that will give you some heat or fire resistance, so that will let you stand on the fire a little bit longer and deal some more damage. So this is much easier, a very easy behemoth to fight. I would say whenever you're going in for the first time, don't go in solo, go in with a group, look at what they're doing, you know, get your hits in, back off, get your hits in, back off again, and watch how things progress. Before you know it, you become a master slayer when it comes to that behemoth, and you can actually go and attack that behemoth solo as well. Now, I will say, when it comes to games like Dauntless and Monster Hunter, as I've explained earlier, the tips are the only things that you can get. The build, yes, you can get it, but when it comes to skills, you have to develop your own. I may be an individual that goes on head first. You could be an individual that goes for the leg first or go for the sides. So that is one of the things that goes into the personality of a slayer. We're all different, and we have our own different styles and different weapons that we are in tune with. So scenarios will always be different. But with that said, you have to be prepared for everything. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next Dauntless playthrough.